can continue. Welcome to Shifting from Grudge to Grit, Grace, and Gratitude. I'm Anisa Taran, and I'm joined with my co-host who's having breakfast during lunchtime, and also Dr. Elizabeth, all the way from California. And I'm so pleased to have her here because it is only 6:30 a.m. in California. And she's sitting there like she's had a much more organized day than both myself and my co-host. So we are looking forward to this conversation today. So I'm going to hand over to Jamila just to greet everyone, and then we will read Dr. Elizabeth's bio shortly.
Hello, everybody, and welcome, and especially welcome, Dr. Elizabeth. We're so pleased to have you here today. We've been looking forward to today's episode to hear all about your story. And I think it is just one that is so steeped with the incredible superpower of your grit. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to you. Or Anisa, are you going to just give us a short or a quick bio about Dr. Elizabeth before we have
I certainly will. So the theme of today's conversation is inner vision, and it's one woman's journey from losing her eyesight to gaining a greater, profound inner vision. Hear firsthand from a remarkable woman who turned a life-altering loss into a powerful journey of self-discovery and resilience. Learn strategies and draw inspiration from our esteemed guest, Dr. Elizabeth. Now, I might not do your surname justice, but Wisniewski. I hope I said it correctly. Okay, we'll get that right. Hear about an incredible story nonetheless. And let's engage in some authentic dialogue. We're keeping it real as we always do, of overcoming adversity and finding strength within. Let's read a little bit about her bio. Here's her professional philosophy. She believes in an evidence-based approach that balances research, clinical expertise, and patient preference. Oh, I like that. Her extensive experience in holistic healing since 2006 and as a doctor since 2012 enables her to create personalized treatment plans. As someone practicing without traditional eyesight, she emphasizes embodied awareness and mindfulness, encouraging other healthcare providers to cultivate similar practices for better patient outcomes. Little bit about the personal journey. Despite losing her vision over time, her resilience was shaped by her parents, both special education professionals. After her mother was diagnosed with breast cancer and her own retinas detached in high school, she developed innovative ways to succeed academically. Whoa, I love this victory stories. Triumph. Her mother's legacy taught her to transform challenges into opportunities. Her father's support and their shared love for music also played a vital role in her journey. Welcome to everybody that's here on the Instagram. Welcome, Michelle. We will occasionally take your comments, and please interact and engage to share her hero's journey. So without further ado, over to you. Tell us where this all started.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor. Well, it started with my eyesight when I was 5. And I went in for my going into kindergarten physical exam, and the pediatrician just told my parents, something's different with her retinas when they looked in with the ophthalmoscope, and the pediatrician wasn't sure, and so sent me over to an ophthalmologist, and nobody knew what was going on with my eyes. And so all these professionals were like, let's do exploratory surgery. And my parents had the foresight to be like, absolutely not. She's 5. We're not going to do exploratory surgeries. And so it took about a year and a half. I grew up in West Michigan in the Midwest in the United States. And so we ended up 2.5 hours away from where I grew up in Detroit. And there were times my parents would drive me back and forth every single week to see the top retinal specialist in the world. And so I have this rare eye disease, mostly like most prevalent in boys in the Middle East, and I am neither of those things. I'm Polish American, a woman, and nobody else has it in my family. And so it's just, it's something I've come to recognize as a soul contract, which we can definitely get into. But
Yeah.
over time, I had over 30 surgeries for this retinal condition, and I've subsequently lost the eyesight in my right eye when I was 14, and then in my left eye when I was 21, just a week after I finished my undergraduate studies. So it's been a journey.
Indeed. Wow. A massive one at that. So from age 5, you really started your hero's journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Essentially.
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
talk to us about the soul contract. I like that you reference it's my soul contract. Tell the audience, what
Well,
does that even mean? We know.
yeah. It was really hard losing my eyesight, and I felt a lot of shame, and it was also painful, like physically painful. And that's something I don't share with a lot of people, is that I live in
Mm,
chronic pain in my face with my eye pressure constantly shifting. And so that part's hard too, because you think about it, like if you have tooth pain, something in your face, it's hard to get away from that pain. So I have this
yeah.
constant pain in my face and pressure and migraines and all sorts of things. And so I just really did a lot of work in all different types of therapy. And so, on top of being a doctor of chiropractic, I got a second doctorate, a PhD in depth psychology. So, it's Jungian based with specialization in somatic studies. And
Mm,
especially during that time, since we were required to be in therapy, I was like, I'm not going to just do like talk therapy. I'm going to do somatic therapy. I'm going to do EMDR. I'm going to go into this and process my own grief
mm,
around my mother passing away when I was 14 really intensely and around my eyes. And so I ended up working with so many different types of healers because I'm always open to different healing modalities and traditions and rituals from around the world. And I ended up working with a shaman and doing some different journeys and going into where did this come from? Because I know that it shaped my life and it's meant to be for me to lose my eyesight, because otherwise I was on track to becoming an environmental attorney and I wouldn't have
mm,
shifted into chiropractic and becoming a doctor twice. So during one
mm,
of those journeys with a shaman, was able to like envision myself in utero in my mother's womb, making this soul contract to lose my eyesight in this lifetime. And that really shifted my perspective of being like, I can do this. I am okay. I am safe in this experience and in my soma, my body. And just that meaning making process that like this was chosen for me and it really makes me unique and special has helped me transmute a lot of my shame and my fear into a place of empowerment, turning this
mm.
challenge of losing my eyesight into a huge asset.
Wow, if that's not the epitome and embodiment of non-attachment and allowing yourself to completely surrender, then I don't know what is, Anisa. But this is such an absolutely inspiring and motivating engagement with you and listening about your story and about the soul contracts. That particularly really does interest me a lot. I've been watching the series on Netflix. I don't know if you've watched it, Anisa. It's called Another Self, and it's
Yes,
about oh, you told me you did it. Yes, you
I told you about.
were able to
I did an all-nighter. I did an all-nighter with this series.
yes,
Dr.
yes.
Elizabeth, you must go and watch it. I don't know if you haven't yet, but go and watch
What
it.
is it called, Jamila?
Another
It's another.
self.
Another
Okay.
self. I think we should just put it into the comments,
Yes,
Anisa.
I will.
But
I
what,
will.
my gosh, we have this a gathering every month, and we have a guest speaker coming in. And 2 months ago, we had someone come in, and he did a group family constellation, and the effects of it were like just mind blowing. And I shared that with Anisa. And then she said to me, you've got to go and watch this series called Another Self. But it speaks about your soul contracts, and it speaks about allowing yourself to surrender, because we do get so caught up in this world and we think that this is the be all and end all of everything, not really realizing what our sole purpose is when we come to this planet, and why we choose to be here, and the lessons that we've chosen, because we've chosen this life, haven't we? We choose our parents and we choose our partners, and we choose because we have lessons to learn. So it's absolutely amazing listening to your story. And what I would like to, it's just unbelievable how you've moved from strength to strength, and where you say you accepted what it is that you've been dealt. And a lot of people, Anissa, go through their lives and then they come to this point where you could say, like going through a midlife crisis, and they just give up. A lot of women this happens to, where they feel like, well, I've done everything that I can for my family, and now some of them as young as their late 30s, 40s feel like their life is over. And I find it so inspiring just to listen to how positive you are. I mean, you're a doctor twice over, and still seem as if you're on your mission to accomplishing so much. So really, such great admiration for you, and there's so much that we can learn. So just tell us a little bit more about one more thing. Thank you so much for sharing with us also about your pain and the chronic pain that you're feeling. I'm sure that's not easy for you to do so. We feel very special that you shared this with us. But how do you manage and how do you cope, not just with the physical pain, but with all of the other challenges that you go through? But how do you maintain that grit and dig in and move forward, and try to accomplish everything that you set your mind to doing?
Yeah, so I really cultivate practices and daily rituals that I refer to as spacing in, because our culture, our society especially, wants us to space out and distract us. So I'm always like, how can I space in and find that zen, that peace within myself? And so I meditate every single day, and it's different every day. It's not always me sitting on like my yoga mat or my meditation pillow. Some days it's just me being very present and aware with washing dishes or playing with my dog. Like, I always want to have moments throughout the day where I'm really present, noticing what I'm noticing, and having that somatic attunement to what's happening inside and outside of me. So mindfulness practices are really important to me to recenter myself. And then I also, since I'm in clinical practice as a perinatal chiropractor, I'm seeing pregnant people all day, from preconception, prenatal, postpartum, and I get to see babies. Like right after this, I'm going to check a 4-day-old baby, and who, because birth is a lot on a baby. So I'm just going to make sure their spine's aligned really gently. But that's a lot of energy exchange. So obviously, like, we want to wash our hands for hygiene, but I also find it important where I'll run water from my elbows down, because I don't want to take anyone else's energy past ideally my wrists. And then I shower when I get done taking care of patients. And yeah, it's to like, because I'm get warm, I'm moving bodies during the day as a chiropractor, but it's also just to move that energy. And I'm a water sign, I'm a Cancer, and so I just had a birthday and everything. Like, I'm so like, just water is my element. So that's what cleanses me. So finding these daily practices and rituals can be so helpful. So mindfulness, yoga, being with my dog. And then I also write a lot of poetry and music and sing and play some different instruments. And that is really grounding for me as well, to come back to myself and just know, like, we're all energy, everything's energy, and that maybe I'll get my eyesight back, maybe I won't, and I'm fine either way. But at the end of the day, it is temporary, because we're embodied souls, and I know that I'm okay and I'm safe in this experience.
Dr. Elizabeth, when you spoke about the soul contract, firstly, let me just acknowledge the spacing in thing. I mean, I don't usually take notes because I can remember, but I was intentional to make a note of the spacing in. I think it's such a profound insight to say Well, and look, you're spacing in insight. It sounds like it's definitely an insight, right? Because
Yeah.
we generally do look outside of ourselves. And for you, I was trying to calculate 5, 14, 21. It is almost as if every 7 years, something pivotal happened in your life. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's a connection, and if you've discovered what that connection is to 5, 7, and 21. It looks like it's a 7-year difference each time between them, with the exception of the 5 to the 14. But when you discussed around being in vitro and actually understanding the soul contract by the time you were in your mother's womb, I recently embarked on a program myself where one has to actually almost go back to being in the womb state. And for those that might not be in the esoteric world and not as spiritual or think about soul contracts, they would think this is all woo woo. But what a
Yeah.
powerful, once you just go within your body as you describe and understand the somatic experiences that goes with the trauma, the wounds, not only of ourselves, but as we said, the intergenerational trauma that has been passed down onto us through our ancestors, i.e., either our mother or our grandmothers, right? It is just amazing then at that pivotal juncture to know that it was never really meant to be as it's happening to us to make us feel like we're the victim of it. It is in fact a catalyst for us to step into greatness. And so you have been the embodiment, and not have been, you are the embodiment of
Yes.
greatness. I want to, I wish I could say it, the boss bee, but I think LinkedIn might very well just throw me off the platform if I use the word. But I'm sure those that are listening will know what the other B stands for. But yes, Dr. Elizabeth was saying, I am a boss bee and I love it. And I said, I'm going to call myself and my daughter and any other powerhouse woman, we are boss bees. So I just want to acknowledge you and say, your energy, you speak about energy and that exchange, you vibrate beautiful energy, one of paying it forward, one of saying, hey, you need to go from tragedy to triumph, right? Not sitting in that victim consciousness. I mean, really, Jamila, times two, doctor. This is just beautiful. And I'm really grateful for having you on our segment today and sharing this beautiful story for others to see. Hey, don't wallow in worry and feel like a victim. There's more to life.
And also, Anissa, I think that it's about just you exude positivity, and it's all about your mindset. Because, like you said, you didn't look at this as something that it's made me a victim. You took it, you owned it, and now you are rocking it, and you are helping so. And boss B for sure. If this is
Tell us
something.
about I wanted you to tell us what is the significance. Have you delved into the 5-year-old experience, the first losing your eyesight at that age, then again at 14, then again at 21? Is there any significance to that?
Yeah, well, I love that you notice those patterns because I'm always noticing that, like, in the year with ends in a 2, I always make a big move. Like, I'm always looking at those patterns. So that was great that you picked up on that because you were like 21, and then when I was 28, I became a doctor for the first time, and then my second doctorate at 38. So that's awesome. Yeah, I could read by the time I was 3, and that was part of being raised by educators. But I also have this deep sense that my soul is like, you need to get all of this in. You need to, because I would just like pick up encyclopedias and read them. And so I think I was really like soaking it all in. And my parents said I would look at photo albums, and it was stuff from even before I was born. And I would just cry as this like sensitive Cancerian soul. But I think I was just bringing it all in so I could remember it in all the cells of my body and my soul. So yeah, I mean, when I was 5, it took a while. I didn't have my diagnosis for a year and a half or so, and I had my first surgery in first grade. Um, but I don't know the significance of the 5 necessarily. I mean, 5 is the number of change, but
Mhm.
I think I was just preparing, and it's all just so temporary. And I do speak really esoterically, but what I tell my practice members, my patients, is I'll ground you in things like anatomy and physiology, but I can take you to the
Good.
cosmos. And so it's that
Ah,
both and where I
beautiful.
really know the science. And having a PhD, I can really dive into research. But I also am really open to different traditions, and I've studied things like Ayurveda and from India and traditions that, I mean, that's been around over 5,000 years. So for that kind of stuff,
Yeah,
I'm like, I don't need clinical trials. It's been around. If it didn't work, it wouldn't be around.
true. Jamila?
And please tell us a little bit about your work with the shaman. I find that very intriguing.
Yeah. Well, so interesting because right before we did that, I purchased, I wish I had it in this room, a raw garnet from the Ganga, the mother Ganges river in India. It's like this big of a garnet. And so the shaman I worked with didn't know that I had done that. And she's like, this soul contract that like splintered, because we were actually doing soul retrieval where you bring all the fragments back to yourselves and make yourself whole. Is this beautiful garnet. And that was my mother's birthstone as well. And so that all just like really resonated for me. But then also from this other side and perspective of studying perinatal psychology, there's so much that happens in the womb in all different dimensions. It's like mind, body, spirit, soul, psyche, and all connected to our planet, our connected, our collective. There's so much happening with our experiences that we can scientifically look at as well. But then on the spiritual level, you know, we all have this birthright to travel back into journey. That's like a shamanistic perspective. And I am by no means a shaman, but I just have really cool friends. And so we all have that birthright to go back to that experience. So whether it's through some sort of journey, and that doesn't mean you have to be on like psychedelic drugs. You can, if you're with a skilled practitioner, they can drop you in through meditation into different states of consciousness just through like breathing. Um, but that was my experience of going back in utero into my mother's womb, connecting with her in this other plane, and like realizing this gift of like, this soul chose this, and therefore like I'm going to accept the journey, I'm going to accept the mission. That's the beginning of the hero's journey, right? Like we're called in. And so I was called into this lifetime to do something really different, and I had no choice but to accept it and do it.
It's beautiful. Thank you, Zaida, for joining us on Instagram, and Michelle for still being here. If there are any questions that those that are listening in, if you have anything for Dr. Elizabeth, please don't hesitate to ask. I'm sitting here in awe thinking about the journey actually starts at conception, then is what you're saying, that hero's journey. And
Even
and that is a lesson. And sorry?
even preconception though, because you mentioned it
Okay.
earlier, like our souls, our baby souls can be around us, and you said earlier, like we choose our parents, and so it can start, I believe, preconception.
I'm so intrigued by that because, one always assumes that it's during that pregnancy. I mean, I have 3 children, and I can
Mhm.
see which of the 3 kids is really, I suppose, struggling with very dark emotions and experiences. And it was my first pregnancy, and I was in a very dark emotional state. So that really carried forward to the firstborn. When it was the second-born, I was a bit more self-aware and a little bit more confident as a mom, and wouldn't just take in whatever and could stand my ground a little bit more. And I can see that that's coming through even in my daughter. She's feisty. She's a boss bee for sure in a lot of ways. And then with the third one, it's just, I just let it be. I was in a very different energy and space. So I want to look a bit more deeper into this myself. So thank you for sharing that knowledge that it's probably before conception, and one assumes it's only at that point.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So tell us, I mean, what were some of those inner demons that you had to slay on your hero's journey? Because it's not easy. Let's just face it here. We had a brief chat prior to this. We only just jumped on 15 minutes before and at our first meeting, but we managed to say that it's not easy. So what were some of those really trying, difficult times that you were faced with?
A lot of it was in high school. When I was 14, I was a competitive swimmer my whole life, starting from a young age. And I was at swim practice my freshman year of high school. And all of a sudden, I just couldn't see the wall, and my retina had detached. And I had emergency surgery, and 5 weeks later, my other retina detached. But during that time, my mom had breast cancer for the third time, and she passed away that year. So my freshman year of high school was really terrible for me. I had 3 eye surgeries. My mom died, and then 5 days after my mom died, I had knee surgery because I had dislocated and like shredded my knee the year before, but I've been swimming and rowing on it the whole year. And so it was horrible. And I was really depressed. And I was in therapy for like a bereavement therapist after my mom died. But at that time, there was still, and there still is, but I feel like it's getting better and better, like this pejorative view on being in therapy, like you need to have your head shrunk. So I felt a lot of shame even that I needed that. Whereas now I'm like, everybody needs therapy. I really speak on it every
Yes.
day. But, being 14 and all these hormonal changes and my mom died, I was just, high school was horrible. And I'm like ashamed still sometimes of like how angry I was. But I didn't know how else to cope. And I also really had this point where for a couple of years where I held on to the grief so deeply in my soul. And I felt like if I didn't, that meant like I was forgetting my mom. And that's, I see that with other people around me too, with grief around family members and friends and even pets. But we have to move through that and be in like that both and state of like I can miss and love this person and also move forward in my life. But that was hard for me as a teenager. And because of that, when I graduated graduated from high school, I moved across the country. I just needed to like clear the slate and start over somewhere new.
And what sort of support systems did you have, or didn't you have any? Because this would have been a very difficult, trying time for you. I mean, as an as a young adult, losing my mom, it was the most awful experience for me. So I can imagine as a young teenager how difficult this must have been. And did you have a strong support system around you? Did kids your age understand what it was that you were going through and the experiences that you were enduring?
I was in a high school group where it was all the counselors had put it together for people who had lost their parents young. So I had that every week, which was really helpful. And then, being a swimmer, just being in the pool 5,000 yards a day, like it's just you in the water. So that I found that really meditative. But I have a really amazing dad who was left to raise 3 girls. And I mean, that takes a special soul as well to be like
Definitely.
such a girl dad. But what happened at the end of high school is my dad started dating a woman who was a widow, and she had 4 kids, and her husband had died from brain cancer. And so they ended up marrying my freshman year of college. And so we have 7 kids, and we're like because none of us, there was no divorce or custody, we all went through this similar trauma. We all get along, and I'm really close with my stepmom. And so I always refer to those like few years in between as the dark years. I'm like, I don't know how we survived. Like, my dad's not a good cook. I don't know what's happening. And so, I mean, he'll admit that. He was offended the other day. I was like, oh, I have this peace lily. It's doing so well. And he goes, I have a peace lily from your mom's funeral still, which is 25 years ago in May. And I was like, wow, I'm surprised you kept it alive. And he was like, thanks. I guess you kept kids alive. Sorry, Dad. But
Oh, I love your sense of humor.
he's so sweet. I talk to my dad every day. I always tell everybody, and my friends all are like, I wish your dad was my dad. He is the kindest, most gentle, sweet person. And I know my mom chose him for a reason to raise 3 girls. And then I am so close with my stepmom, and I'm glad to have that experience as well. And to have 2 stepsisters and 2 stepbrothers. And we don't really say step in our family. Like, those are my brothers. I love them so much. And so it's really fun. And that's a big support for me. When I need like gentle guidance, I call my dad. But if I need like a kick in the pants, my stepmom is this fiery redhead Leo who grew up in South America. And so she's like this, she's just fire. So I call her. And so it's this balance, and it's so helpful for me.
That's amazing. So you've got the best of both worlds there.
Yeah.
You mentioned about
Absolutely.
everybody needing therapy. Even the therapists themselves need therapy also.
Yeah.
To ask your opinion as well, like just speaking about kids and going through issues, and then kids nowadays have so many like challenges that they've got to deal with, ADHD, anxiety disorders, depression, gender issues, there's just such a huge host. What is your opinion of therapy, or some sort of help, but for younger kids? Because I feel that this is so important nowadays, that the younger they are, the better it is for them to have someone that they can speak to, but have that outside support system, even if the parents or the family is able of offering that. What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think so, that they need it. And for young kids, I'll refer them to like play-based therapy. So they might be playing in the sand or drawing. Um, for me, because of my perspective and all my extra training in birth psychology and perinatal psychology, I'm always going to go back to like, what was the conception like in terms of like the energy, but then really what was like this child's in utero experience. Was the mom really stressed out? Was she on drugs? Was there any sort of abuse? Those are the kind of things I want to know. And then looking at the collective, the nervous system of the family as a whole, because oftentimes we need to go back to the birth, even because there can be so much trauma and it's held in the baby, and not just physically, but energetically, emotionally, spiritually. And so I refer to an organization here in Southern California that works on that, and they recreate, let's say, like the journey to the breast. If the baby wasn't able to complete that journey because of they were whisked away because there was trauma or cesarean birth, they might not feel complete in their birth journey. And that's important for them to integrate their primitive reflexes, but to integrate their birth story. And so when that doesn't happen, there can be a lot happening with them psychologically. So I'll refer to that, and absolutely the younger the better. But then working with the whole family and how they constellate together is also really important. So I don't think like just sitting and talking is really the best type of therapy for most people. Since my PhD is somatic depth psychology, I like to bring movement for people. I'm a somatic movement therapist. And so where is this stuck? Where is the trauma stuck? How can we process that? So like a quick example in my practice, I have a prenatal mom, new to me, really traumatic first birth story like 4 or 5 years ago. And I could just feel it, like she's all hunched over, she's really tense. And I'm like, how are you feeling? You're trying to do this vaginal birth after cesarean. Are you are you feeling prepared physically and mentally? And I could just tell there was other stuff under the surface. So I was like, I want you for your homework. I want you to write out your story. I want you to dance it out. I want you to sing it out, draw it out, whatever it needs to be. We need to pull this story and this trauma from your tissues up and out of your body to get you ready. So she comes in and she's like, I did my homework. I saw my 4-year-old's crayons out. I drew with the crayons the the experience, and it was so helpful. And then her 4-year-old came in, was like, what are you doing? Grabbed crayons and drew all these stick figures all around that of like, oh, this was you when you were eating before you gave birth to me. This is you after you birthed me. And this 4-year-old participated in this birth story and meaning making process. And I was like not anticipating that. And I thought that was so amazing.
Powerful stuff. I mean, I think you need to come to South Africa, please. Like, I really do believe. Let's make it happen. Just come to South Africa. You know, I work closely with another lady friend of mine in Cape Town. Jamila and I are in different cities, by the way. Jamila is in Johannesburg and I'm in Cape Town. But I work very closely with a psychologist who runs these sacred circle retreats. And what's beautiful about it is that, like you, it's not about one healing modality. Yes, she's a therapist. And you know, she holds the sacred space in that therapeutic realm, in the talking and the sharing of our stories. But it's not about owning the space entirely. So what she does is she'll bring drumming in, and she'll bring acupuncture or sound bowl healing, or calligraphy, you know, or like anything that just combines it, because there's some sort of movement. And it has just been profound to witness the acceleration of these women, the different women's healing for different modalities, because each person is different, as you say. I'm very intrigued by that experience that you've just described, because I was telling Jamila after watching Another Self, I would like to actually do the family constellations for myself and my family. So maybe, Dr. Elizabeth, we can talk about this offline, how you could play a role, whether it's virtually or whether it is you coming to South Africa one day. But let's see, maybe if you do visit us, we can get a couple of women together. And Jamila's also got a group. How could we bring in some of your work here into South Africa?
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I would love to do that. Absolutely. I say yes.
Tell your partner, your partner, you know, we're not going to Nigeria, but we're going to come to the southern part of Africa. So we are going to visit Africa.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. You know, and I've been looking, because I'm starting another business right now, a femtech company. And so we've been looking at partnering with some different companies throughout Africa. So it's definitely in this next year in the future. I'm so excited about it.
So it's definitely meant to be then. You definitely find your way to South Africa for sure. This is fun.
I love it.
You know what I love about this conversation is that, Anissa, there's so many people who are unaware of different modalities that are available. You know, like you say, most people feel like it's just talk therapy and that's about it. But there's so much more that's out there that we can utilize and that we can share with others. And it brings you such an incredible depth of knowledge, not just about yourself, but about your ancestral lines, about your past lives and the effects that it has on you today. And this is what I just love about, you know, our journey, is that we meet so many interesting people along the way in this world. It's not even been a year yet, but the amount of people that we've met and the caliber of people that we've met with the knowledge and qualifications that they come with has been absolutely so educational for us. Well, for me at least, because there's so many things that I've learned learned about on this platform from people like yourself that have really shifted my life, and has helped me in so many different ways, and will help me be a better a parent to my son, and hopefully, to stop a lot of the negative patterns that that keep on recurring, and to break those cycles. So
Mhm.
give us a few of your favorite other modalities. I mean, I've done theta healing, and that I just absolutely love. And then we've learned about family constellations, and that is just incredible, to hear. I did breath work, and in that session of breath work, and like you say, you don't really need the psychedelic drugs to get the effect or the desired effect. But I went in so skeptical about it, but then with the click of a finger, you'd like literally transported into another space
Yeah.
completely, and you're just then instantly a believer in all of this. So tell us a little bit about, what are your favorite modalities or your go-tos, and the different ones that have had like really great impact on you or the people that you see.
Yeah, I've tried so many things. So I love things like acupuncture and cupping, and then Ayurveda. Everything within Ayurveda resonates for me for some reason. And that's why I play the Indian instrument, the harmonium, and I chant kirtan. My dog's name is Jaya, which is victory in Sanskrit. So that
Oh my
really
gosh.
resonates. He's very victorious. And
Yes.
um, but then I've done things like theta healing with somebody who goes up into the theta wavelength, and done work in there with getting information from source, creator, the universe, God, goddess, however you view that higher intelligence. I've worked with a local, he's from a lineage of bone setters from our Chumash tribe, which is our local indigenous tribe to the California coast where I am. He's a language and historian teacher here. And I worked with him, and he's done some traditional ceremonies for me, which have been really special. And I feel so privileged to attend. Um, and then like family, I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's family systems. And that person dropped me in, and it was like this deep meditation really quickly. And I did some work in my childhood home, and where my arms and legs flew off the table. Like, it was so wild.
Yikes.
Yeah. And to the point that the
Yeah.
person doing it was like, don't scare her. Like, oh, he's so wild. So I'm always like really open and want to try new things. But I love things like sound healing. Music is a big thing for me, and I find so healing. And so, just for me, like kirtan is call and response chanting. It doesn't have to be in Sanskrit or Hindi. It can be in English or whatever your language is. But just sitting, chanting, being in this like melodic state of consciousness is really potent for me. And because those are the places in which I am more than limitless, and it doesn't matter that my eyes aren't physically the same as they used to be. I feel like it tunes up my third eye even more.
Oh
I love that.
gosh, it's so powerful. So, I gauge from all of who you are and what you embody, you are somebody who lives from a space of gratitude,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so, how has being in this gratitude space transformed your life and your relationship with others? Share
Mm-hmm.
some examples with us too.
Sure. Well, gratitude and love and joy are the highest vibrations, the highest frequencies available to us in the living universe. And so we can't manifest and materialize unless we're in those states. Otherwise, you're just like placing your order with the universe over and over again and hoping it comes back. But if you can do it from this high vibe place, it's going to come back. It's going to happen. So that's why I do all the mindfulness and somatic based practices every day, because that gets me to this place of gratitude. And if I'm in a place where I'm like, oh, this is not a fun day, I'll just sit and meditate, do some like basic breath work like box breathing or something like that, where it's 4 breaths in, you hold for 4, that kind of box breathing, until I literally have a smile on my face. And that's when I know I'm there. And sometimes I'll have to like meditate so intensely, and I'll like think about my dog, and that will get me there. But then I'm like, okay, now I can go out into the world. So that really helps me. I also, one of the daily rituals I didn't mention is I call in all my benevolent ancestors. I'm very clear. I don't want to mess around with ancestors who are not benevolent and good and amazing, because not everybody's good in our ancestors. And so I call them in, my guides, the 9 directions. So I do east, south, west, north, above, down, masculine, feminine, and from within. And I have my own little prayer I've created, calling them in. And then the other thing that really helps me get into this space of gratitude and the high vibrations is I will out loud say, and this is for people in this physical 3-dimensional plane as well as spiritually, I only communicate with equal and higher vibrations. Full stop. I'm not going to deal with that low vibe. No, you can't, because it drags you down. So I make that very
Everything
clear.
is energy.
Yeah.
Yes. And so just this week, I don't know if it was this week or last week, I wrote about loss. And loss is not loss. It's only just making space for expansiveness, right? So you have been the epitome of expansiveness after several losses.
Yeah.
But in those moments, it's also very hard not to give ourselves grace when loss occurs, right? So what are some of those moments where you never felt graceful and you didn't feel like you had grace towards others in those moments? What did you do in those moments? Because we're human. And as I said before we went live, we've all been the narcissist. We've all been the ogre and the villain at some stage in our lives. So let's get real and share about some of those moments that you showed up in that way. And how did you shift?
I like that you're naming all these archetypes. Yes. I mean, I definitely, I'm really sensitive. And so in those times I might cry, but it might be like an ugly, bad cry and not just like tears of joy, of like just really feeling raw and like, WTF, why is this happening to me? Because I am positive overall, but this is work. This is a practice and it's not perfect. And I definitely have days where I'm like, I just hit my head on something I couldn't see or something annoying. So I definitely get down on myself sometimes with that. And also just projecting in the past, especially like feeling like I'm not seen because I can't see. That's a big theme for me when I read back a lot of my poetry. I'm like, I'm never seen. But really, it was me shifting how I could see and using my third eye and having to like realize that I am seen. But that's been a really big theme for me, of like never feeling fully witnessed in like every aspect of myself because of some underlying shame that I've always constantly am working through with my eye disease, of just worthiness. Like, am I actually worthy of like a really good partner? Am I worthy of success? In the United States, 50% of people who have vision, like are visually impaired, are unemployed. And that is motivating to me, of like, I'm going to get 2 doctorate degrees. That's hard. So I've definitely worked through shame and unworthiness. And those are big themes in my life, especially the worthiness piece, that I thought for a long time work equaled worthiness. And so with that same shaman, her name is Faith, which is, I think, the best actual name for a shaman. Faith and I learning back 1,000 generations, this work equals worthiness, because I'm like Polish on both sides and that Eastern European, like Slavic, like must work all the time, like very intense pressure
True.
mentality that I've had to work through, and I still work a lot, but it doesn't make me who I am. It's just an aspect of me, just like my eyes are an aspect of me. It's not my entire story.
Mm.
What an amazing story that is. What I'd like to also ask you is that,
Mm-hmm.
you tend to get overwhelmed also. Like we all want to get onto this journey to self and try to find out more about ourselves and learn more about ourselves. And we've got to do the journaling practices, gratitude practices, and then we've got to do the meditations and all of that. But it's a lot if you're someone that's new to this. Um, and most times we find ourselves with such messy lives that we don't have everything in neat little boxes and, schedules, especially like where, like you one of the lucky ones who you up early at 5 a.m. in the morning and you get your practices done. But a lot of people find it very difficult to get into those patterns. What is your opinion about that, and what would you advise people to do so that they don't get demotivated or fall off the tracks and just give up on it? Because we all know what the benefits of it are once you've done. I mean, I feel it immediately when I'm not doing my meditations and I'm not reading and I'm not engaging with like-minded people. I feel it immediately. But what would you advise for those out there that are starting off on their spiritual journeys? And what practices can they put into place without it being too much or too overwhelming at the beginning?
Well, I think we need to tap into the alliteration of the show name and give yourself grace. You don't have to do every single thing every single day. I see this in my practice too, or because I give a lot of homework of like stretches and yoga, and they're like, I only did it 3 times. I'm like, that's better than 0. So we can, picking one thing at least per day, and it doesn't need to be hours. Like, you don't have to be like this Buddha sitting under a tree meditating all day. It's moments of mindfulness, moments of movement. That is what can shift us. And so I feel like we all can take a breath and just, take a moment and literally take one breath. And the next day it could be 2 deep breaths. And soon you're in this practice of actually breathing, because so many people don't breathe. They're stuck in fight or flight.
That's so true.
Mm-hmm. And so
That's
just
very
those
true.
moments. Yeah. And that's all it needs to be. That you don't have to be going to an hour yoga class. You could do 8 minutes of yoga, and that's going to make a big difference in your body and in your soul. So finding grace and ease within your practices and knowing they're going to wax and wane, maybe with the actual moon, maybe with just different cycles in your life, and then that's okay. Just keep moving forward. If you miss a day, that's okay.
I'm going to read some comments. I love that. And there's been responses to that. Welcome, Ian, on the Instagram page. Ian says, seems like a fascinating conversation. I joined the 5 a.m. club in January, but fell off the wagon recently in this cold winter that we're in. Again, we're in Cape Town, and South Africa's in the winter season, not as the summer in California that's indefinite. And then he also says, love the grace and self-compassion. I've enjoyed using Balance meditation app. Thanks for those comments there, Ian. So yeah, I think in the last few moments that we have left on our conversation, is there any way that you feel is an ideal approach to integrating both grit, well, not both, all of those aspects of what we talk about on our segment?
Yeah.
Grit, grace, and gratitude, because as I've said before on this segment, the grit needs to just be the right level of grit and not egocentric based, because we can show up and say, I'm going to show the world, and that is connected to ego. And so we need to be very mindful, even in the sense of grit, how we show up towards ourselves and others, because it can be self-sabotaging if we're in a hyperachiever mode. So how do you find integration between having the right level of grit, the right level of grace and gratitude?
I like this question. And what's coming to me is that we need to ground. We have this other G word coming through. Ground it into the body, into the soma, into our somatic experience through some sort of body work, because I'm really truly believe, as somebody who studies somatics, that our body is such a big part, and we can't live in a place of mind over matter, because that's disregarding the matter, the body, the feminine expression. And so once in a while, it doesn't have to be every week or every month, but try to get a massage or acupuncture or chiropractic, something that integrates this into the cells of your being. You can do all this work, but then we need this time. It's like shavasana at the end of yoga. It's time to receive, and that's where the greatest lessons and all this growth occurs. So I really encourage some sort of integration period that's receptive, that's open, so that the lessons can be like downloaded into the DNA of your cellular structures.
Beautiful. I'm loving that Jamila is taking all your golden nuggets and posting them as comments. Thank you, Jamila.
It's just been so inspiring. I mean, I've had to document it here so that all the people, all of our viewers that are going to be watching the repeat will at least, have the opportunity
Yes.
to also respond to it. But it's really, truly such a wealth of golden nuggets, and this hour is nearly not enough. I find, for you to share so much of your knowledge and inspiration, Dr. Elizabeth. Anissa, this is definitely something that we need to do a follow-up on, maybe episode 2, after our last September guest who's scheduled, because this is such a fascinating topic, and you've been through so many different experiences and modalities, and I for one just want to hear more and more about it. Other than your truly inspiring story, and gosh, my goodness, what a boss.
What a BB, a boss bee. Is there anything you Is there anything you want to? I mean, I want to thank you for your humility. What shines through for me is I don't care about all those labels right now, because you don't come across with those labels. Your humility is what is just so awe-inspiring for me. You sit here as humble and just being willing to just be this fountain of joy and contentment and happiness, and sharing and spreading that. So I do feel you a torchbearer for so many of us that are on the journey and that will continue this hero's journey, because we know it's not linear, right? It's always going to be repeated. And we always got to go and in search of getting to know more of our higher self and more of our higher self, never quite arriving. And I think if we ever think we've arrived, then we need to revisit that picture again for ourselves. Anything in closing you'd like to leave our audience with? Anything that's your biggest lesson of insight, your biggest aha moment, anything at all?
I'm like, wow, that's a big question. One of the things just that came to me when you were talking is, I got rid of my white clinic jacket and really write a lot about this in my research, calling it white coat privilege. And so I like to be really real with my practice members and to be on their level, because I'm just a human like they are, and not perfect at all. So I like to just meet people where they're at, whether it's a baby, a belly I'm talking to with one of my prenatal practice members, or whatever it is, and just to be real and authentic. And I think that's a big shift we can make in healthcare, and in general, that we just, meeting people where they're at on this really human level, because on that level, we're all the same. And that's where I like to, that's where I start and where I end. So This has been really a
Yeah.
fun experience. I'm so grateful, and I would love to come back. And I definitely want to explore putting together some sort of maybe workshop and coming to South Africa next year.
Absolutely. Would love, love, love that. I
That
want you to
that
stay on with us.
yeah, that'll be
Don't
unbelievable.
leave.
Elizabeth.
Sorry.
Yes, don't leave. Anissa, I'm taking back the follow up or part 2 in September. We will not be
Yeah.
having it while Dr. Elizabeth is sitting where she's sitting now. We we are inviting you to sit here with us, and hopefully post September you will plan to do a workshop here with us in South Africa, or at least let's just put it out there into the universe that before the end of the year we get to see you and you grace us with your presence. That would be just absolutely amazing.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
concur.
definitely.
Definitely. Definitely. I love that. Let's put it out there and let's manifest it. It's going to
Yeah.
be happening.
Okay. Let's do it.
So for those that have listened in today, Firoza just joined us. Firoza, you're going to need to watch the replay of this. It has been powerful. To sum it up, it's get to know self in all aspects. Don't be afraid of getting to know yourself. Accept yourself. Give yourself grace. Be in allowance of all that you are, even the dark sides, and just be and flow with life. And that's essentially the core message that I'm getting out, and the energy that's been exchanged here with Dr. Elizabeth. I'm going to be ending the live. Thank you for those that's joined on Instagram, on YouTube, and for the comments that have filtered through. And Jamila, again, thank you for posting those golden nuggets. We will end the live, but do come back next week and we'll do this again. Dr. Elizabeth, please stay though. We normally do a debrief just shortly afterwards.
Sure.
Bye everyone. See you
Jamila?
next week.
Okay. Thank you. I'm ending. I still want to stay actually.
Yeah.